Hey, welcome back to the Essentials. We're having too good of a time here in the big condo studio. I'm joined once again by my good friend Dan Halpern, all the way from New York. Say hello, Dan.
Hey guys, what's going on?
All right, all right. So we've been really having a good time, reliving our childhood memories through film, TV, and all of that. And so we thought we would look back at fantastic series. Superhero of our ages before Marvel took over was James Bond. Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 series. And we thought that, look, there's too many movies to talk about. They're hitting their 20th year now and everything. And what I thought would be more interesting is just to explore what I call the original trilogy and everything. So that would be to begin with the man himself. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan to start us off on Ian Fleming's James Bond.
James Bond, yeah. Okay, so here's some fun facts that originally Fleming had written 14 books and compilations. What I didn't know until I was just checked it up online is that there are actually 25 post-Ian Fleming books. There's 6, like the way they did Young Indiana Jones back in the day. There actually are 6 young James Bond books, graphic novels, and short stories. Yeah, there's a 3-book Moneypenny book series.
Really?
Yeah, and then you got to look at the movies. We're up to what, number 25 or 26? That the latest that's going to be coming out. That was supposed to be coming out, I think, this week or next week, but got pushed to November. And you're looking at, I think that between the box office over all the years and the home video and television licensing, whatever, I think you're looking at over $15 billion worth of revenue from James Bond that's been generated. So this thing is a 60-year juggernaut.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, was also, so the thing about it is, Ian Fleming, it was kind of like some people say he was writing himself. He was romanticizing himself as this really super suave secret agent who had a license to kill and everything. And so he created the suave, debonair Bond, James Bond, shaken and not stirred. And they found an actor in Sean Connery, who was a Scottish actor, to play this role. I mean, was there any story behind the casting of Connery?
Yeah, I mean, the first, when I was doing some research online, I think that the first choice actually was Cary Grant.
Wow, I could buy that.
And I could buy that too. Although he probably was too old at that point. I think it was Cary Grant 10 years prior,
Yeah. Charade, no, definitely. But definitely he would have been perfect.
But they wanted to sign him for multiple films. He didn't want to do that. He only wanted to do one. So then they went to Patrick McGoohan.
Another classic from The Prisoner.
Yeah, but he turned it down. And then they even, I think they approached David Niven.
Another good actor. Wow.
Yeah. Well, David Niven would have been a little too probably, how do you say, too refined in a way.
Well, you got to remember, though, David Niven probably went from that role to the Pink Panther. So he was the original Pink Panther.
That's true.
In that series. So, at that time, David Niven, I could see it.
And Roger Moore,
as the British spy.
Right. And Roger Moore actually was considered. But he was,
really?
But they also thought he was too young at the time.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Because he was although he really was Connery's age. But Connery, Roger Moore also, they said, was too young looking at the time and too pretty. Where Roger Moore, I'm sorry, that's Roger Moore. But Connery, I think, even though he was the same age, Connery always looked a little older. And he looked a little, he was a little rougher. He was a little more manly, masculine looking.
He was a manly man and everything.
He was a manly man.
And that actually was important for this first iconic version of Bond, where we'll get to. I mean, you had to believe that he was a guy who could beat up men, seduce women, and look nice doing it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And supposedly, they did have some kind of contest where, to be James Bond. But he wasn't in that contest. He just came into a casting session, and they just made the decision right then and there, he's the guy. But it was but it said, I don't know how true this is, that the director of the first Bond film, Dr. No, Terrence Young, was the guy who sort of introduced Connery to like the finer things in life, sort of, took him out to Savile Row, got him like nicer clothes, and sort of taught him how to be a more refined gentleman than he probably really was in real life.
No, definitely. I mean, like the way he lit a cigarette in that casino scene, and everything. He probably had a lot of help and support around that. So
because if you think about Sean Connery, when you look at like when you look at a lot of other roles he played in his life and interviews that have been done with him over the years, he always came off as a much more rough and gruff guy. I think probably the more real Sean Connery is probably the role he played in The Untouchables.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about like Dr. No for a second. I mean, this film was iconic in many different ways, but mainly because it introduced like these sexy femme fatales, these women who could kill. And like one of the best opening images was of Ursula Andress coming out of the water, as if she was Venus coming out of the clamshell.
Right.
I mean, like it was like pure, magic.
Sex. I was about to say pure sex, but
well, I'm trying to keep my language under control.
You can say that.
No, I know. But there was also what I thought was an interesting look into Bond and his character. Was the back in this period, you started to have these films where there was the black and white female, antagonist, and I can't remember both the names. I think one was Bambi and the other one was something else. But these were like these kung fu femmes that Connery had to take on and everything. And I think on the one hand, they set this up because, what you would notice, like not just in that film, but in the subsequent films like Diamonds Are Forever and everything else, is that Connery didn't mind slapping a woman around. Now, this, of course, is totally a no-go zone for today's times.
Of course.
But back then, it happened, and people didn't think twice about it, and stuff like that. But it's like, kind of like in retrospect, when we look back at these films, Sean Connery doesn't come off too favorably, as this iconic hero that he definitely was for young men at the time.
Well, there was that famous like thing he said to Barbara Walters, I think in the 80s or 90s or whatever, like, about slapping a woman around occasionally, so, which I think it took him a long time to live that comment down.
Well, because it's like, are you the character or are you Sean Connery? What's going on?
Well, it's also like it was different times, so like obviously everything was like really, misogynistic, right?
That's the word.
And women were primarily window dressing, especially in the ultra macho world of James Bond, where they were there for his pleasure and plaything, and they were pretty one-dimensional characters, right? For the most part.
No, exactly. I mean, it was kind of like,
except for Moneypenny. Moneypenny was always the it's interesting.
Girl.
She was the good girl, and almost like it's either the girl that James doesn't want to like either touch for, because like then like there has to be some woman there that's, I guess, pure or whatever she might represent, Yeah,
because I mean she definitely was all business. She was all intelligent, but you could see the smoldering heat in their small scenes and everything, and you can see that there was a mutual respect and love. So if somebody wanted to say that the Bond character was misogynistic, someone will bring up Moneypenny, like, well, wait a minute, I was, like, compared to Moneypenny, he didn't disrespect her, and all that other kind of stuff. But, that's neither here nor there. I mean, let's look at, like, the other films in the Connery series, like, especially The Golden Woman in Diamonds Are Forever. Because that was, that was classic, wasn't it? All their body all painted in gold.
Oh, no, that's Goldfinger. Goldfinger.
You sure?
Yeah, because she's painted in gold.
Well, see, I didn't want to assume, bro.
I think so. I'm sure somebody will say otherwise, but
Yeah. But still, that image was indelible in my mind because that's why I thought it was Diamonds, because I can remember actually going to the cinema to watch that film, because I watched a lot of films way too early, as I said earlier on in our conversations and stuff. What am I doing in there?
A lot of those early James Bonds, I think, got re-released too. You know,
Yeah, well, no, definitely,
re-released, and
definitely.
we used to
I
see
still
them,
watched it too early, bro. So you
right? And we
trust
used,
me.
and also we in America, as Chase, as you know, we would see them. They would play, I think, on ABC. You know,
Yeah, well, no, definitely, definitely. Jill
Mhm.
St. John, that's the name I was looking for.
Right?
Jill St. John was this character, and actually also too at this time period, a lot of the women, had these sexual entendre names, and
Pussy
everything,
Galore.
That's the one I was thinking about. You know what I mean?
And they would never do that today. They wouldn't. They
No,
would.
no, no,
Would
no, no.
dare
They
to.
would never do that today. But I think that was honor Blackman was Pussy Galore and everything, and
Well, if you think about how, just to take a leap for, and we're not really talking about the current stuff, but just as to show how far everything's gone. The
yeah,
fact that in the latest film, right, per the trailer, he had actually retired his 007, and the new 007 is a black English woman, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you see that it's like made this sort of revolutionary or maybe evolutionary leap over the course
Yeah,
of.
yeah. It's too early to go to that point there, but I mean, yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, but it was always the Bond series was always diverse in its characters, and it was always they would always, I think, they would flip it to be that because they had strong women, it was all right,
Mhm.
But as we could see in looking at the Connery series, it was all about the times where it wasn't all right, but it was the way it went and everything. But so either ways is that Connery retired James Bond and everything. I don't know if it was a money dispute or whatever because he came back for Never Say Never Again.
No, no,
Right?
no, no. If you remember, actually, the Diamonds Are Forever was after the Lazenby. George Lazenby came in for number in between. So because yes, Connery basically, I think, leftover money,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was saying.
and then
I
Lazenby
know.
came in, and then Lazenby didn't do the next one, and they brought Connery back, and they offered him a boatload of money and probably a piece of the back end, and then that was the last one until he did the later one, Never Say Never Again. But that was outside the auspices of the traditional Bond franchise.
Yeah, yeah, and so so then comes into like the 70s, where as I said, we were going to talk about the iconic. So I was skipping over Lazenby for a reason,
Mm,
but the thing about it is that when you look at the Moore years,
mm,
right, there was a significant change in the character of Bond. So before we talk about the change, I wanted to talk about Roger Moore because it was
sure.
interesting how you said that Roger Moore was initially considered for Bond when he was
Mm.
younger. But what I like is like who's going to be James Bond. That's what I feel. That's what the discussions were going on with the Broccolis and everybody.
So
Is like who's going to be Bond. And what they did was before you say what that was, I was just going to say is that Moore was really successful on television.
mhm.
He had two shows, not just one. So he had The Saint and he had The Persuaders with Tony Curtis. And, so he was primed for this role. And I feel he could have had his own franchise with The Saint, but then, so now you tell us the story about how he got into the
Right.
Bond.
So I think that Roger Moore was first of all, it's interesting with Bond too is that there's a sweet spot age wise for him for people to start somewhere at 35 to 40. Bond has to be a little sophisticated. You can't go out and put in like a 26-year-old actor. You
No.
know what I mean? This guy has to have lived some life and
Yeah,
have
it can't be like Doctor Who when you bring in Matt Smith.
right. And it's interesting you bring up Doctor Who, and I'll get to that in a second. So basically, United Artists at this point had ended up owning like I think half the franchise. And believe it or not, I don't know whether they did this, in conjunction with the Broccolis or outside of them or tried to push it, but they tried to push Burt Reynolds
Right. In the 70s.
in the 70s, in the early
So
70s.
we're talking about Smoking and Bandit Burt Reynolds
But we're
or
talking like
Gator Burt Reynolds?
Gator, like Deliverance, Burt Reynolds. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
it was right after Deliverance. So Live and Let Die was
Wow.
73. Deliverance came out in 72. So he became a giant star, I think, out of Deliverance.
Hmm.
And Burt Reynolds said, like, you got to hire an English guy, you know?
Really?
And,
Well,
and
also Burt Reynolds did Dan August as well. So forget.
okay, and here's one out of left field. And this just shows you typical, like, American Hollywood thinking. I don't know where they. Well, you can sort of see where they got this, but still, it's like who
Mm.
came up with this? Like Adam West.
No way.
Yeah, Adam West.
Wait. Adam West. Let's say we're talking about the 70s. See, you got to understand, right? Not only was he the 60s Batman, which everybody knows, but
Mhm.
Adam West kind of like went a little bit softcore in his later years.
Did he really?
He was in the Happy Hooker series.
Oh, okay.
I shouldn't have been watching those shows, but go on.
Oh, you have to.
Movies.
You know, I never watch any stuff like that. But
Anyway,
but the main front runner for the series until Roger Moore came back onto the scene, actor name, and I'm sure you know who this is, was oh, okay. You know, I'm getting that confused. There was an actor, you may not know who this guy is, but you probably know the show. There was an actor named Michael Billington, and he starred in an ITV show called UFO from the early 70s.
Yeah.
And he was the front runner for a while until Moore came back. And he actually screen tested for Live and Let Die. And then he screen tested again for Moonraker and Octopussy. And he never got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And stuff. Wasn't it called Project UFO?
I think it was just UFO. I think Project UFO was the American series. Like Project, It was Project Blue Book. You know, like
no, I don't mean the new show, Project.
No. I'm saying the old one was like Project UFO, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
But so yeah, this guy was in the lead, or he was screen tested many, many times, never got it. It's interesting that what's his name, Mankiewicz, the guy who helped.
Tom Mankiewicz.
He actually wrote Live and Let Die, or parts of Live and Let Die, and so he deliberately wrote the script to sort of, or he rewrote parts of the script to fit Roger Moore's personality. So which
was more comedy or more
comedy, lighthearted, debonair and suave and all that stuff, but with a tongue-in-cheek point of view.
Well, let me say two things about Roger Moore's years as Bond. Is that, like, even though Bond started out obviously as a British agent and everything like that, he was, handling, situations around the world. It was Moore who brought in more of a, how should we say, a 70s ethnic motif into things because with Live and Let Die was really kind of like the first black villain, Yaphet Kotto. You know what I mean? I mean, we of course we got this S.C. James Seymour as Taro and everything like that. But it was. I think it actually was even set in New York. Am I right about that? I think it was even set in New York,
parts. Some was.
I know he went to Florida. I know he went to Florida,
New Orleans.
Yeah, and all of that. But I mean, there was also seen in New York. So it was weird, really, because basically being a New Yorker watching these films. I mean, Bond was for, the urban audience, in that aspect. So to see characters, and it's not a shame to, hey, look, the black guys are bad, you know what I mean? But Bond's going to take them out, you know what I mean?
But it must have been interesting, like, for you to grow up and see, like, oh, there's some scenes of Bond in the hood.
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly what I'm saying. Because he was in like a New York taxi or something like that. He
went up to Harlem.
Yeah. But then also too is like, I'm just only conscious of time. Also too is View to a Kill. I think was also in New York, wasn't it?
That I don't remember. I haven't seen. Oh no, that was San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
But
I think because I think I thought there was something about that one as well. But I mean, yeah. So Roger Moore really he endeared himself very well into a whole new audience, shall we say, because it was the rise of the blaxploitation era and everything as well. So it was really like the Broccoli's really hit gold. I think it really solidified that, okay, this guy is going to be okay in this role. And plus, we watched him on television as well in those two series that I'm talking about. So he was a perfect match compared to this Michael Billiton guy.
Yeah, and the first Bond movie that I remember seeing in the theaters was Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh yeah.
And that was like sort of the first.
That Sheila Easton song.
No, that was Carly Simon. Sheena Easton was a couple of movies later.
Okay. Okay, but that was the car that actually turned to the submarine, though.
Yes, that was. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
That was. So what happened was that that was like the first sort of really big budget, like sort of almost like that's almost a precursor of so many modern kind of like Fast and Furious and all those kind of movies that do these insane setups. That I think Spy Who Loved Me was like the first of that kind of film.
Well, yeah, but that's why a perfect follow-up was Moonraker, because, like, not only is it Bond in space, which they always talk about when series kind of like jump the shark, they usually go to space.
Yeah, I would say so, a little bit.
But it also was kind of like one of those first conspiracy theory kind of deal where the moon was a set in a studio. You know what I mean? So that was really pretty cool as well.
And let's not forget for those two movies, like one of the greatest villains ever created, Jaws.
Yes, Richard Kiel. Yes,
Kiel. And like, did Jaws? Did he drop dead? Did they kill him off? I always forget.
No. They didn't kill him off. He was like floating in space and everything, But yeah, he never.
But they should have But Jaws played up to the kitschiness of the Moore movies at that time. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they really went over the top. I mean, because you had before Jaws, you had Odd Job. You know what I mean?
Right, with the hat.
With the hat. So you always have some kind of crazy Bond villain, or Blofeld stroking the cat. But anyway, let's hit to the third guy. In this trilogy, because to me, what's important about Pierce Brosnan is that the change of female characters in the Bond series. So
right. So I'll give you like a quick rundown of the whole casting situation with there. So Pierce Brosnan was supposed to replace Roger Moore in 1986, but he couldn't because of Remington Steele. But it turns out that when you go on Wikipedia and you get actually more information, Remington Steele actually was canceled.
Yeah, but they brought it back. They held his contract and said, we're going to hold you for another year.
And the reason why they did that is that they canceled the series and they announced Bond, and it became so popular. And the thing was, and this is all about timing, there was a 60-day clause in his contract that they could hold him for more, to renew. And that clause expired 3 days after they announced Bond. So if they had waited 4 fucking days, Brosnan would have been Bond.
But see, they did it on purpose, you know what I mean? Because they clearly, I think it was NBC, wasn't it? They clearly just wanted him not to do it. And unfortunately, it gave us Timothy Dalton for those two, which I think are failed movies, Living Daylights and License to Kill.
Yeah.
Which also was called License Revolt over here in the UK. But either way is that we finally got the Bond we wanted. I mean, this is my generation. This is the Bond we wanted, because Remington Steele was the coolest guy on television. He was Bond, clearly, and everything. And when, it starts out with that dive over the Hoover Dam and GoldenEye, we were like, yes, that's our Bond. Finally, this is our Bond. But,
and just to get, we'll get to the character in a second, but just give you some more quick details about the casting. So Timothy Dalton was asked to come back for a third Bond, but they wanted him for multiple films, and he said no. They looked at, and the people that turned it down, Mel Gibson turned it down.
Oh, God.
Hugh Grant turned it down.
Hugh Grant, wow.
Liam Neeson.
Wow.
And the person who, Sam Neill.
Wow.
No, he didn't turn it down. He didn't get it. He did. But the person who actually was the backup to Brosnan, if Brosnan was not going to do it, was a guy named Paul McGann.
Oh yeah.
The eighth
You were
Doctor.
going to say with Doctor Who, right?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
So
no, that's amazing. That's amazing casting list. And I always love to hear the casting list that could have been, because there's always a reason why it wasn't going to work out. But you don't go, oh, that person would have really been perfect. You can only just go, wow, that's an interesting casting choice. Thank God it didn't work out. But I wanted to just say quickly about the female.
and Cary Grant would not have worked out after the first movie or two because he just would have gotten too old too quickly.
Yeah. But I don't know if we call them antagonists or protagonists, but the female leads of Bond. We had Denise Richardson in GoldenEye, but then we had the interesting Halle Berry, Die Another Day, and we had Michelle Yeoh in Tomorrow Never Dies. Now, Michelle Yeoh was interesting because she had just come over with Jackie Chan and Super Cop, and I remember that exploded. I remember Michelle Yeoh actually on 42nd Street actually came to the theater when Super Cop was playing and everything, after the show and stuff, So that just shows you how desperate she was to attract the New York audience. But those films, they weren't great, but you could see that they did their best to try and change the image of Bond, to make it more, female friendly and everything. Go back to the suave, but tone down on the toughness, the tough guy, which finally brings us to when that reign of Brosnan ended, we just threw out the kitchen sink and went back to brutal, turned Blonde into Daniel Craig, with Casino Royale and and this big bruiser of a Bond and everything that we have now. So it was just like an amazing series and an amazing evolution of a character. Now what I just wanted to say before we go is that they were debating for the longest time, should they make Bond black, which means that Idris Elba was touted for a long time.
Right.
And then that's why you got the thing where you were talking about this woman who they decided to make Bond, or 007, a black woman. Now, the thing about it, I'm just going to say is, we're both involved in film and writing and all that. Why not just create a whole new character then? I mean, this character was created in the 1950s, right? It's lasted for all these many years. Why not just create a whole new character? Why keep going back to the well for the same character? Final thoughts on that.
Oh, I think because he's iconic. I mean, he is I think he's like the person that secretly like every man wants to be, and maybe a lot of women would want to be, even if women wouldn't admit it. They may want to oh yeah, because he's.
It's a women love a bad boy.
Yeah, exactly. And look, his character has definitely evolved over the years. I think the misogyny for the most part is kind of gone. And he also represents a character that comes from a different time and a different era, maybe.
But that's why can't we just have a new character for a new era is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think that, what probably may happen is, who knows if that new 007, if she survives the movie. I don't know if she does or not. We have to wait and see.
I don't think so. I think she dies in the beginning of the movie. My prediction. I'm sorry. I think because Craig, the way he left off with the last film, I think she was the 007 that dies, and when he comes back. I mean, that's my prediction. I don't think she's. It would be interesting if she was supposed to be. He dies and she takes over. But I don't think that.
And I want to be, I want James Bond. Myself, along with millions and millions of people, they live vicariously through his adventures, and also what that character's like. Everybody wants to be the guy who has the great suit and is in great shape and walks into a room, and everybody wants to be, either be them, or all the women are like going, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, don't worry, Dan. You're that guy.
Yeah.
But either way, is that I mean, I love it how we were focused in our conversations.
And by the way, and I'm sure that there are women out there who probably have different points of view of James Bond than us. and maybe other guys out there too. Everybody's gonna no. One character doesn't please everybody. You know what I
No,
mean?
no, definitely. And also too is that as we always encourage people to like and subscribe to this channel, is it that please feel free to make your comments down below about who your favorite Bond is. I mean, is it beyond the three that we talked about? And or what is your favorite scene from a Bond movie out of the 25 many different films Bond out there?
Now,
So,
I do want to make. I've heard just in the future after this Bond. Now you're looking probably 3 or 4 years down the road from here. One of the people that's sort of been in kind of main consideration, I think, lately has been the guy who's the lead in Outlander.
oh, I don't watch that show, but yeah.
Okay, so that guy, and I'm sure people like, I would imagine Hemsworth, right?
Why Men in Black International didn't do so well.
Yeah,
And
but I'm saying as a type,
Hemsworth is built for comedy, man. I mean,
he's
every
too
time
much
he
of
tries
he's too much of a galoot, right? He's too
yeah, well, no, every time he tries to do a serious action film like Black Hat or something like that, it just doesn't work for him. I think he's built for comedy, and you
But I
should
think
play
that
to his strengths.
I think whatever they do with I think whoever they cast, I think possibly is that they may end up leading to go back more to the Roger Moore a little more
Yeah.
suave, sophisticated with a little hint of humor. I love Daniel Craig, but he's he's not funny. There's nothing funny about any of those
he
movies.
doesn't play it that way.
He doesn't.
Well, I mean, he was clearly doing his own thing. And I mean, I think they really just was stretching his films to hit the 20, to be honest with you. I think they just wanted to make it so that if they do go down with the series, they wanted to be able to say, we have 20. You know what I mean? And everything. So, but either way, we hit the 20 ourselves. We're at the end of the road. So, I mean, either way, please, like I said, let us know what you think of the show. Maybe you have some childhood memories that you want us to look at. You can always put that comment into the chat, and everything, because we hope to, do more of these. So, I would like to thank my partner, Dan Halpern. Thank you, Dan. And our man Blake in the booth and everything. And so we're going to thank you all for watching. This has been Essentials. I'm Chase Johnson Lynch. Until the next time, we'll tune off or turn off. Blew that one. Peace out.